My name's Lauren. I'm an author, tiny house builder, but most of all, I'm a huge tea snob. After having to give up coffee, I picked up tea and I haven't stopped investing in it since. From researching its history, to trying new teas whenever I get the chance, to learning about the tea masters of the world, I'm here to review my various cups and give you insight on all the things I learned. Welcome to my Cuppa Tea. Ceylon Uva is a tea from the Uva province of Sri Lanka. The peak harvest months of this region are between June through September, and the area is located 3,500 feet above sea level on the eastern slope of the Central Mountains. Stephen Smith, the distributor for this tea, states that this particular growing location creates an intensely floral and slightly sharp tea, which is golden in color. This tea is subject to the Ceylonese grading system and comes in as OP1, which means a well-twisted large leaf, though I won't pretend to know the Ceylonese grading system further than that. Tasting notes for this tea is supposedly a hint of malt, petunia, and tobacco. Uva teas tend to be astringent with a nice bite and freshness to various blends. Uva tea is often used in various other tea mixes, some of which are Stephen Smith teas that I have enjoyed in the past, such as Lord Bergamot and Candy with the K. This tea is from Sri Lanka, the Uva province, and I apologize if I'm saying those names incorrectly. I am American, very English, so please forgive me if I'm messing up any of these names. This area is the second least populated region in Sri Lanka. According to a Wikipedia article, its major tourist attractions are the Dahinda Falls, Diulama Falls, Rwanda Falls, and the Yala National Park, and Gal Oya National Park. Britain colonized this area, and this area then had an unsuccessful or a few rebellions against British rule, one of which was led by a guy named Kapitapola Diswai, and after sickness and various other losses took hold, Kapitola was then captured and beheaded, and apparently his skull was a little strange in shape because they took his skull and sent it back to Britain. As a note, I read that Britain has since then returned this skull, and it is in a museum in Sri Lanka, since he was seen as, from what I read, a very respectable person who was just trying to free people. After this rebellion, Britain decided that they didn't want any more rebellions ever for the rest of life. So they went literally scorched earth on these people. They burnt their homes, they killed anyone over 18, they poisoned their wells, they destroyed irrigation systems, and I'm sure they did a lot more terrible things that may need to be left unsaid just for YouTube reasons. So Britain really just destroyed these people for trying to be free. So after this, if I've got my times and my dates right, Britain brought over tea, which was stolen from the Chinese people, but I can get into that in a different video. So not only did they kill and murder and subjugate the people of the Uva province and Sri Lanka, they stole tea from the Chinese people, and I believe China was closed at this time. You couldn't come in, so there's some stuff that went on there. And then they decided to plant tea in this region. Now, as beneficial as some of their agricultural things were, we do need to make sure that we understand that the reason some of this came about was because of a terrible colonial violence. And I'm not well versed in agricultural enough to know if some of these methods were already around beforehand, and if maybe Britain just hadn't killed everyone and hadn't decided more and more people to be under their subjugation, we might have had this knowledge way beforehand. So at a certain point in time, there was a man that came, and there was regions of the country that you couldn't plant. They were just really dead. dead areas, super barren, and there wasn't enough grass to feed livestock, and there wasn't enough good nutrition to even plant crops there. So there were just swaths of land that went unused, if you've got to use land, I guess. And so this man came and helped come and find a way to cultivate those areas. And a lot of tea is being grown in many of those places, from what I read. And again, great agricultural thing, fantastic, wonderful, love that for us. But it was kind of an industry built on the bodies of the people who natively lived there. And as hard as that is to kind of understand about a drink that I love, tea, and that I find a lot of solace and comfort in, we do need to know the history, and we do need to put credit where credit is due and honor the people who need to be honored, who deserve to be honored. And so I think that it's important to know that as wonderful as tea is, and the culture that is around it nowadays, and even in the past, of peace and meditation, that like many things, it was weaponized and built upon the bodies of native peoples. For a while, that area of Uva province was not, I guess civilized would be kind of the rough word to use. It didn't have a lot of roads in and out, and so it was kind of far off from any nearby cities. Over time, those roads came, but that left the region pretty lawless for many number of years. I can't pretend to know what happened, but it's just they were able to kind of get away with different things, and they were just kind of unregulated. This also meant that they didn't have big cities, so they kind of made clubs. There's things called tea clubs that were back then, but no one was invited except for the people who like owned the plantations. So it was kind of like a white boys country club, where it was just a bunch of these really wealthy people who owned these different tea plantations, came together and talked about various aspects of the farming of the tea and other aspects of that. Once those roads did come, of course, that brought an innovation. They were able to kind of better harvest and better deliver and better package and ship out the various teas, which of course only benefited the people at the top. Today, tea farms in that region range from 3,300 feet to 5,600 feet, and for meters, it's 1,000 meters or 1,700 meters. Because of its unique location beside the central mountains of Sri Lanka, this area of farming is subject to plenty of rains during the winter and strong dry winds during the summer. And if you don't know, that kind of changes the chemical balance in tea leaves. I know you probably just saw my face light up. It's really cool. And I'm not a scientist, but it's just really neat because they're really like, you get a lot of water, and then those dry, hot winds come, and that would pull off the moisture in the leaves. So the plants had to kind of figure out a way to adapt to those dry summer winds. And that stress changes the chemical balance and kind of just like how those leaves are set up to survive that's those strong winds. And that creates a very unique taste in your tea. What I've come to learn is that tea under stress kind of makes the best flavor. Tea that is under a lot of really big stresses as change of seasonal things, such as, okay, we've got a ton of rain and then we just don't get any. Or we get a ton of rain, we get super hot summers, or we get winter and we get snow, and how do you survive that? Those kind of teas on those mountainsides help kind of make some of the best flavored cups that we have out there. From our favorite book, The Art and Craft of Tea, I have another book coming. We're not going to cite it all the time. It's just really good. It has a lot of knowledge, and I would, again, really highly recommend picking this one up if you love tea or if you're interested in getting into tea. I don't know, is this legal? Can I show the inside of books on YouTube videos? But it's really cool. It has like a ton of different pictures on the processes and breaks down stuff. You even got recipes in the back if you're like into making tea into different things. It's really cool, and it talks about the cultural impact and all of that. But I would like to read the opening of black tea in this area. Can you hear those dogs next door? The basic processes used during the production of all black tea is withering, rolling, oxidization, and drying. Black tea is an outlier from other forms of tea because of the large presence of condensed cations, i.e. polyphenols, formed during oxidization. This is an impressive way of saying that black tea is unique in the tea world because it goes through a significant oxidization process. So I talked a lot about oxidization processes in my oolong tea from whenever that was posted, and if you're interested, I would definitely check out that. It talks a lot about kind of the processes used to oxidize tea, and oolong tea is also oxidized. Black tea is more oxidized. Black tea is generally fully oxidized. I don't think that it's ever partially oxidized to become black tea, because there's a few different processes of withering. You could wither it fully in shade, you could have it wither under the sun, different stuff like that for black tea. One thing is you've got to make sure that you wither and dry them consistently, and you can't do it too quickly. If you do it too quickly, it'll change the flavor of the tea. And a lot of this is due to because of the makeup of the leaves, the chemicals, just the molecular makeup of different tea leaves, and if you do it too fast, you lose some of those things, or you release certain other things, or whatever else, and that changes the flavor of the tea. I know this is kind of a vague overview of black tea. I can really get into like how it's made potentially in another video, but it's very similar to oolong in the fact that it is withered, it's plucked, and it can be either hand plucked or by a machine. Machines are becoming a little bit more popular. It really depends on the region if you're able to get it. A lot of tea plants, the Camellia sinensis, likes to grow on slopes, and it likes to grow kind of on the edges of mountains. So sometimes if you're going to grow them more wildly or natively in those areas, you're not going to be able to get machines up there. You're going to have to do more hand plucking. Whereas if you're doing a big farm and you have them more on flat land or anything like that, then you're probably going to be able to get a machine out there and kind of pluck them differently. One thing to kind of note is that a lot of the teas, they draw from the earth that they're in and the place that they're in. I talked earlier about how teas in really extreme, intense situations can create more strong flavors, more different flavors, things that make better tea overall. Part of that is also where they're planted. The soil, the water, the other plants around them all affect how that tea is going to taste. If you have some floral plants around the tea, the Camellia sinensis, then you're going to get more of that floral taste as it's absorbed through the leaves. If you have, more clay kind of earth, then you're gonna have some of that clay kind of affect how the tea tastes. That just the nutrients that the plant is able to pull from the ground is all going to affect how the tea leaves end up tasting in your cup. Okay, so it's been brewed. It's really, really hot. So I don't know if you guys realize this. I'm sure you do. As you try teas, when they're really hot, you get one flavor, and as they cool, you get a different flavor. It just kind of like mellows out the heat. Certain flavors become more apparent without the temperature kind of outweighing them in your palate. So when I try this, kind of like when I tried my oolong the other week, it had one really great flavor when it was hot, and it had some more of those grassy notes came forward as it cooled, which was just a nice little additional layer of flavor. So I'm really interested to see how this one's going to be. I will review the hot temperature on this, and as I finish the drink off, I'll kind of tell you my first thoughts, kind of what I'm thinking, the review in this video. And if you're curious, after I do these videos, I sit down and I talk about writing in my living room, a little bit more casual, as I finish my tea, and I post those on my Patreon. So if you're curious about that, curious about writing, I am an author in addition to a ridiculous tea snob. I talk about the craft over in that side of my house with the last bits of my tea. So if you're curious, go ahead and check out my Patreon. Any little bit helps, helps me get more tea, and I can talk about it more. Okay, let's give this a try. Okay, that's really good. So I would say this would be a 3-star tea. So this is gonna be kind of like the teas that I would drink in the morning. I don't want to like have super expensive, fantastic teas in the morning, but I do love the staple black tea with kind of a more of a subtle flavor in the morning and strong, like bold body, but not like I'm gonna be sitting there contemplating the nuances of the different flavor layers. So this is a really good basic black tea. Let's see, I brewed it for 5 minutes, which maybe if I had done 4 minutes, that would have been even better. I'm a little concerned that it got over brewed. The reason being it had a little bit of that dry aftertaste where, you know, you taste the tea and it kind of lingers, but it's that dry kind of flavor that lingers. And usually when I make teas, I don't get a lot of that because I don't brew them to boiling. I don't put boiling tea, or I don't let them sit for super, super long. So it's interesting that I managed to get it with this one. It's not very apparent, it's not very strong. And I don't know if that's just part of that tea specifically, or if maybe I should have brought it down instead of 5 minutes, done 4 minutes. I just really like my teas strong, so I like to kind of brew them closer to that 5-minute mark if they're black teas. Let's see, the aroma was really good. I smelled it as soon as I opened its bag, like it hit me. It was fantastic, really strong, like just really strong black tea notes. You could almost taste exactly what it was gonna, you could almost smell exactly what it was gonna taste like. Very good, very strong, well-rounded, kind of, I'm not even sure exactly how to describe it. I feel like I'll find more words as I do this more often, but very strong aroma. I really liked it. It's not as strong brewed, the aroma that is, but it's still very apparent. Like when you sip, part of that aroma is still brought up into your nostrils, and that still adds to the flavor of the tea that you're having. So I ranked lingering as a 3 out of 5. After you finish with that strong, like well-rounded, like woody, almost like an oak, I forget how exactly they described it, but that woody flavor kind of falls off shortly after you finish your sip. Would have loved if that tea flavor just lasted a little bit longer, but it was really good for while it lasted. It just kind of made me want to take another sip to get that back. The balance was also a 3. It does come in pretty strong with that fantastic black tea opener, just those bold kind of woody flavors, but it did get outweighed by that dang dryness, and that could be just me. That could have just been a mistake on my part for potentially overbrewing it, or potentially overboiling it. I don't think I overboiled it, but I think I might have overbrewed it and gotten that dryness out of those leaves on accident. So I'll definitely be trying this tea again and seeing if I can maybe get that balance up a little bit more, and maybe it was just user error. Body strong, fantastic, comes in right away as soon as you take a sip, with those bold flavors. If you have had black tea, it's similar to that, but it's just like, it has almost a sweetness in it. It's got that strong woody flavor, but it's got just like that hint of sweetness. And I guess for me, it just reminds me of California and climbing those oak trees. It just smells kind of like that. And then you smell the sap and you get that little bit of sweetness. I know this is a really strange analogy, but that's kind of like what it reminds me of. The tannic, 3 about. Smokiness, had a little bit of smokiness. Was just a very light hint, kind of helped round out that woody flavor with that tad bit of sweetness, and just that little bit of smokiness. And I think that's kind of where that sweetness comes from. It almost, I'm not quite sure. I'm gonna have to try it a few more times just to get that flavor palette. And as it cools, I'll be able to kind of maybe address more of those flavors. I've drank like a third of it already, just trying to get those flavors and taste all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I feel like it's pretty good. Got a little bit of maltiness, got a little bit of that savory, earthy flavor in there as well. So if you're curious about black teas, this Ceylon Uva from Stephen Smith might be a decent start. It's not too strong. It's not too bitter, and it has just really the base qualities of what makes a good black tea without it being overbearing, or potentially more like, okay, a tea lover would love this, but maybe someone who's not as into tea would, you know, be concerned by it. That's not this tea. This tea is a very good basic tea. That's why I gave it 3 stars. It's not like blow my mind, like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But it's not a bad tea. I'm probably going to start drinking this in the morning. It's very, very good. And it's just like, you get that strong wake-up call from the black tea flavors, the woodiness, the earthiness, smokiness, all of that, without any like complexity. It is just what it is. It is itself to you, and I feel like that's just a beautiful tea. So that's my thoughts on this one, the Ceylon Uva. If you're curious about me just kind of sipping on it and commenting more on it and writing, check out my Patreon. I'm going to be talking a little bit about writing next. Moving over there in just a moment. Clean up my couch space in just a second here and go over there and talk. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I am loving doing these. This is so much fun. I have so many cool videos planned. If you don't know about tea, if you don't know about pu'er is really cool coming up. Gaiwan process, that's coming up. And I've got some tea grown in the States. Actual tea, not like herbal tea, not like chamomile or whatever else. It's the Camellia sinensis plant grown here in the States. This one's from Oregon, and I'm really excited to try it. I might record the video for it tomorrow. Otherwise, have a fantastic day, night, morning, whenever you are, and I'll see you guys next time. Drink safe. The zipper's down. It's embarrassing. You hear about YouTubers filming without pants on, and here I am. Okay. So at a certain point in time, there was a